What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Light and Lamp Podcast. I am here with Steve,
Hello.
as always, and I'm just going to go ahead right at the top and just apologize for the way that I sound and apologize for any coughs or throat clearing that you hear. Unfortunately, about a week ago, I came down with a fat case of COVID, so that's, wonderful. But we're here. We're going to get through it. I just want to apologize off the top for that because, yeah, you're probably going to hear it and it's going to be annoying as hell. So, anyway, uh, you know, season is over. The Stanley Cup Finals ended with the Colorado Avalanche taking it in 6 games. I did predict Colorado in 6 in my Stanley Cup Final prediction episode, but I mean, to be fair, half the internet also predicted Colorado in 6, so it's not really anything crazy. But if we look at the games here, Colorado wins game 1, 4-3 in overtime, and then they blow out the Tampa Bay Lightning 7-0 on home ice. Tampa Bay takes their turn to blow out the Colorado Avalanche on their home ice 6-2. Colorado wins game 5, 3-2 in overtime, and then they take game 6. Or no, they lose games. That was game 4. They won 3-2 in overtime. They lose game 5 on home ice 3-2, and then they win game 6 in Tampa to seal the cup with a 2-1 win. So I'll go to you first on this one. What did you think about the quality of hockey, how good of a series was, and were you surprised by anything that occurred during this series?
Um, I guess it was an exciting series. It was probably one of the better series, if not the best series of the playoffs so far. Um, it was pretty competitive outside of those two back-to-back games where each team took a turn blowing the other one out. But I don't know. I thought it was an exciting series. And I really didn't see anything that surprised me, honestly. I guess I was surprised more about how slow the Lightning looked, but I just think that was a byproduct of how fast the Colorado Avalanche actually are.
So it seems like there's now a formula for how to beat the Tampa Bay Lightning, and you have to do one of two things. You either have to defend them to death. You either have to go the complete opposite route of what the Avalanche went. Even though the Islanders did lose in back-to-back years, last year, very close Game 7, a 1-0 game. The team that took them the furthest all playoffs, and in the year before that, again, the Islanders were the team that took them the furthest all playoffs to a Game 6 overtime. So it seems like defending the Tampa Bay Lightning like to the nth degree, to the elite level, or you have to just be fast, right? Because it seemed like the Lightning really struggled this year with speed in particular. In round 1 against the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Maple Leafs took them to 7 games, and the speed of the Leafs were giving them fits all series long. In games 1 and 2, the Rangers used their speed to a great advantage of theirs, pretty much running the Lightning off the ice in those first 2 games. And then in this series, not just the speed on offense, although obviously the Avalanche have that in spades, it was the speed in all 3 zones. The speed in the neutral zone to clog things up and get back and make that neutral zone a mess. And then the speed in the defensive zone, particularly, was something to behold, especially in the last few minutes of Game 6, when the Avalanche were swarming the puck. Like, every time the Lightning crossed that blue line in that last period, really, I think the Lightning didn't have a shot for like the first 10 minutes of that period. Every time the Lightning crossed that blue line, there was 2 defenders swarming the puck. And it seemed like that was really something that they weren't super comfortable with and able to make a lot of plays out of that kind of position. So it seems like the book is out. The old king is dead, and we found out how to kill him. It seems like speed, or if you can defend them all the way to the end, is kind of the book out here on the Lightning. So, I guess coming off of a team that nearly three-peated in Tampa Bay Lightning, when you look at the Colorado Avalanche, how good do you feel, obviously notwithstanding all these things that could potentially happen in the offseason, assuming that most of this team stays together, how good do you feel about their potential ability to run it back next year?
I always hate this question because you never know, right? Like just
Yeah,
based on like
of
how
course.
some teams can get hot and all of a sudden be a real contender. So, I mean, I feel confident in saying that they could get back here. I mean, the team's good enough, it's young enough, and I don't think they have any real. I mean, outside of losing Nazem Kadri maybe this offseason, I don't think there's really any issues or any like big losses that they won't be able to replace that'll keep them from competing still, you know?
Yeah, I think, again, like I said, obviously anything can happen in the off season. You never really know. So it's definitely way too early to be predicting. But it's an interesting question, right? Because for the first time in a long time, we really look like we might be on the precipice of what a lot of people would say is a true dynasty, right? Like, I consider the Chicago Blackhawks 3 cups in 5 years a modern day dynasty, a cap era dynasty, if you will, because being able to pull that off is incredibly impressive in the salary cap era. But a true dynasty, for like the old heads who are like, oh, you got to win like 3 or 4 in a row to be a dynasty, right? Like this was the first time we really had seen anybody threaten to do that since the Penguins went back to back, but they didn't make the Stanley Cup Finals a third year in a row, right? So it's just an interesting question that there's a model of sustainability now in the cap era, and maybe the Avalanche can follow that model. It'll be interesting because I think unlike the Lightning, there are some notable weaknesses that we can kind of point to on the Avalanche. First and foremost, I know we've been talking about these graphics that the NHL keeps posting. Do you consider the goaltending of Darcy Kemper a weakness on this Colorado Avalanche team at this point in time?
Um, if we get Darcy Kemper from this year, yeah, probably. But if you get if Darcy Kemper can play up to the way we thought he could play, the way he looked in Arizona, I think that he probably it wouldn't be so much of a weakness as much as like a net even. Like he wouldn't hurt or help the team really significantly in either direction, you know. But yeah, I mean when you're getting what was it below average save percentage from like 4 or 5 zones out of the 6 zones listed on those graphics, like
Yeah, it was interesting because Darcy Kemper to me feels very much like Corey Crawford to the Blackhawks, where it was like he's not ever gonna be elite, but you're just asking him to be good enough. Um, and in a lot of ways, he was good enough this postseason. And in some games, some of the goals he let up, you were kind of like, is he good enough? Specifically in Game 5 when they had a chance to close out on home ice. Probably should have had at least one of those goals, and maybe two of them. And it sounds like nitpicking, 2 goals in a 3-2 game. But in the playoffs, you expect your goalie to make saves that he probably shouldn't. And when he starts letting in goals that he probably shouldn't, it kind of becomes a concern. And, obviously, all props to Darcy Kemper. Got it done. All sins are forgiven when you win the Stanley Cup. But it is an interesting question. Although I do think, like you said, going forward, I wouldn't really consider it a weakness. Because I think we've seen Darcy Kemper be able to play at an above average level in the NHL. It's just more of a matter of getting him to get back to that level on a more consistent basis. Um, and for the Tampa Bay Lightning going into the offseason, do you think that there's anything they need to change necessarily, or just bring the roster back, run it back, and see what happens?
I think the best thing they could do now is just try to see if they can get a little younger, maybe integrate some of the guys from their AHL team or some of the draft picks that they might have into the roster a little bit because I mean they're starting to show their age. Not to say that the team is old, but I mean it is getting to be towards the end of its competitive window, I think. I mean Steven Stamkos is what, getting close to 35 now, isn't he?
Let me pull up their roster here for you.
Because I know Victor Hedman's like 30, McDonough's like 31 or 32 now, probably 32, something like that. But they're getting, a lot of their big pieces are starting to get a little bit older. So I
Let's
think they're in
see.
a little bit of a different position than the Colorado Avalanche, who are a very young team who honestly won with in their first real shot. Like there have been a couple of misfires for them in the last couple of years, but this year winning the President's Trophy, right? Yeah, they won the President's Trophy, right?
No, the Florida
No,
Panthers did.
The Panthers did. That's right. But being in the conversation for the President's Trophy all year, and then going in and winning the Stanley Cup, this was like their first real chance, like first real run, I would say. Like we thought they'd be good the last couple years, and we said they maybe could make a Stanley Cup final. But this year was the year everybody was like, no, this is the team. Like they should make a run. They should be good. They should go deep, and they did. But yeah, so it's just a very different situation for both of them. I really don't know what the Lightning specifically should do.
Stamkos is 32, McDonough's 33, Hedman's 31, and Killorn is 32. Those are like the older end of like what you consider, I guess, the core of this team. So
Yeah, so like I said, like not old by any stretch, but definitely like getting up there. Because what we saw Sidney Crosby win his last Stanley Cup at like 35 or 36, whatever it was, a couple years back. Or I guess it'd be like 6 years ago. So no, he'd be younger than that. Never mind.
yeah, 2017. Holy shit, right? Fucking
Yeah,
5 years ago already.
yeah. So I think Crosby's what, like 37 now.
I'm trying to find his his player card, but the Penguins website's
Website's not
incredibly
good.
dumb. 6 years ago, he would have been 28.
Okay, wow. Wow. Sidney Crosby won his last Stanley Cup at 28. Wow. Wild.
I thought he was older. Yeah, yeah. I thought he was like 30 by that time.
Wow, I feel old. Like, wow, that's so weird. Like, this is a total tangent, but I guess it kind of serves my point, right? Like, Sidney Crosby won his last Stanley Cup at 28, and these guys are all north of 30 now. So, how many run? I guess to answer your original question, I think the best thing the Lightning can do this offseason is to just insulate this core with as much either like prime aged or younger talent to try to just keep them afloat and keep them in getting into the playoffs. Because I think this is one of those teams where once they get in, you never really know, you know? Because I mean, after the first 5 games in against Toronto, we had no idea which way that series was going to go, because there were games where the Leafs absolutely lit the Lightning up and blew them off the ice. But then by Game 7, it's like you said, all of a sudden they looked at the old Tampa Bay Lightning and they were world beaters. So I think as long as they can find a way to keep themselves in the playoff conversation in a division that's only going to get better, the Panthers are only going to come back better next year. The Bruins, the Bruins in theory are probably only going to come back better. So if they can manage to stay afloat this offseason, whether that be just making some depth signings or holding on to talent they've had, like they signed Nick Paul today. But I didn't see any like glaring holes on the roster really that like I felt needed to be like addressed right now, that like any pressing issues. And let's keep in mind, this is a team that went all the way to the Stanley Cup final in Game 6 of the Stanley Cup final without their number one center. I mean, they had Braden Point for 2 games against Colorado, and it was very clear he wasn't healthy. And then he played maybe 1 or 2 games against Toronto, or I don't even think he played in the first round, did he?
I don't remember, to be honest with you. And
But I
that
know he
tells
was
you that
out.
like he didn't play at all. If I don't remember when he played, it's like, yeah, when did he really play?
You
He
know,
played. Let's see if I go to his game logs here.
Sorry, I'm making you look up all these stats, but
What? Oh, that's regular season. Adoy. He played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He played the first 7 games against Toronto, but in Game 7 he only played 5 minutes, and
okay,
then
so
he played 2 games against Colorado.
right. So yeah, this is a team that pretty much went the majority of their playoff run without their number one center. So I don't think there's really any concern for me about the Tampa Bay Lightning. I think they'll be in the conversation. Whether they get to a Stanley Cup final again next year is, you never really know. I mean, they could, but I know at the very least they'll still be in the conversation. Like, this is still a good team.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, really, the only thing at this point, outside of time eventually catching up to this roster, that's going to stop them is the cap. I mean, right now, according to Cap Friendly, they're $5 million in the hole, and they still have to sign Andre Palat and Riley Nash. Palat being obviously a huge, huge part of their playoff run this year, scored so many clutch last-minute goals for them, and is a huge part of that, the depth of this team, that middle six kind of forward. So losing him would definitely hurt, and Riley Nash was okay for them. Even without those two guys still being $5 million in the hole, obviously you're going to have to free up salary cap somewhere. Maybe they'll trade for another LTIR contract or something along those lines. So, I think if you're able to keep this team together, because they're committed at this point. This year they don't have their own second, a third, or a fourth. Next year they don't have a first or a second. Or either next year or the year after they don't have their first, depending on the conditions of that trade with Chicago, which is top 10 protected, or the 2023 and the 2024 are both top 10 protected. So let's go out on a limb and say they don't have their first for the next 2 years. So, it's the reinforcements probably aren't coming from within for now. Whatever players you have in your farm system, like to your point, that you want to bring up and supplement this roster with, you're kind of working with them at this point,
Right.
So I think sustaining the team, sustaining the core, but really one of the other big things is the depth of this team has been one of their biggest calling cards, for the last couple of playoff runs, being just one of the deepest teams in the NHL, with guys up and down the roster that can play. I think that's going to be key. I don't really see any reason as to why they can't sustain it. It just might be an issue of,
And they afford to.
like, diminishing returns to a certain extent. Kind of like, the Detroit Red Wings. Yeah. Where every year it's like, yes, the core is still here and you made the playoffs, but we're seeing less and less depth, less and less supporting cast, and we're getting less and less results. But, I don't think the Lightning have really anything to really panic and really fix. Just try to keep things together, stay healthy as much as you possibly can, and try to supplement your roster with depth that is affordable. I mean, like you said, they signed Nick Paul today to a $3.15 million contract, which I think is perfectly fine for a player of his caliber. I mean, the 7 years, I'm not really a big fan of. I don't like that at all, but... Oh, he also has an NTC. I didn't know that. That's
What? Yo,
kind of
Julian
even
Breezeball got
worse.
fleeced on that one. What?
He has a no trade clause for the first 4 years and a modified no trade clause for the last 3 years. Like, I think the
Oof.
money is fantastic. That term is horrendous. Like,
Yeah, that's a wow. Okay, real quick tangent. So you know how contract negotiations are, right? So the team comes with their set of what they think the contract should be, and then the player and the agent, or mostly the agent, comes and says what he thinks it should be. Who negotiated? Like, who, how far apart were they that he somehow managed to negotiate them down, either in money and get the years, and add the no trade? Like, how do you think he managed to swing a no trade clause into a deal like this for like what is essentially a middle six player?
I don't know. I mean, I was saying earlier today on Twitter that I don't have any issues with Nick Paul. I think he's a great player, but let's be honest here. 7 years for a guy who's broken 10 goals twice. Now, granted, look, playing on the Ottawa Senators notwithstanding, but or he's broken 10 goals actually once, and that was this year. This is the first year he's broken 10 goals in his career. And you can say, oh, it's his breakout year. Sure, he's 27. He's finally getting around to it. But, I mean, I'm not giving a guy who has one 16-goal season under his belt 7 years and a no-trade clause. So, like, to your point, I don't know how that happened. Like, did he come at them with some, like, exorbitantly ridiculous, like, I want 5 years at $6 million? And they were like, whoa, hey, buddy. How about 7 years at $3 million? Like,
Yeah, like how did they end up here? Like,
I don't know. That's rough. That is a rough contract.
that's one Stevie Y would have never let slide.
Yeah, I mean, and what's kind of funny is not to like be that guy, but doesn't this feel like the first contract that we'll look back and be like, well, this is how the empire fell, you know?
I
Like
mean, it definitely
this
could be.
7 year no trade clause contract. I mean, 7 year contracts in the NHL aren't unheard of, but usually they're reserved for like top line, like top six players who have like proven themselves over and over again.
Yeah, and I mean, look, the Rangers gave Barclay Goodrow 6 years, which isn't great, but like at least it's only for like a little over $2 million, you know?
Yeah, that's that's a rough contract for Tampa Bay. We'll see because I mean, all credit to Julien Brisebois for what he's done with this roster, but let's not forget that a majority of this roster's core was put together by Steve Yzerman. So, really, most of the hard work was done by Stevie Y. And I don't think I'm really that out of line by saying that. I think most of the legwork was done by Stevie Y. And all credit to Brisebois for putting the final pieces together and getting them to 3 consecutive Stanley Cup Finals. That's a fantastic achievement. Don't get me wrong. But now we're gonna really be seeing like the first instance of like, here's Brisebois' like fingerprints. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I was just gonna say the same thing. I feel like this year is probably the year I would describe it because like it felt like more so when in the last couple of years when he took over from Steve Yzerman that like any trade he made or any move he really made was to supplement the already Yzerman constructed roster. It really felt like this year was the first time he went out of his way to like augment the complexion of that roster by making some, one really interesting signing now and a couple of, one really big splash at the deadline for a guy that really dramatically underperformed,
Brandon
you know?
Hagel, yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see how Julien Brisebois navigates getting like a roster that he necessarily didn't construct, but he kind of maintained and like kept the wheels greased on. Let's to see how he like turns it into his own going forward, you know?
This year is gonna be a little appetizer for how Brisebois is going to handle this roster. Because check out this list of free agents next year: Anthony Cirelli is a restricted free agent. Alex Killorn's an unrestricted free agent. Ross Colton is an RFA. Belmar's a UFA. Corey Perry, not really considered like the core, right? But then Mikhail Sergachev, RFA. Eric Chernak, RFA. And he's going to need to find a backup goalie next year. So I think like this is like the appetizer, and then next year we're going to be like, all right, how is he going to keep this team together? Because like that's a significant amount of their depth right there that's coming up in free agency. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting, especially when like you can't supplement yourself with draft picks because you don't really have any.
And the young talent you went out and traded for isn't exactly living up to the hype.
Yeah. I mean, look, Brendan Hagel, for what it's worth, like, is a solid third line option. I'm not going to hate on him for being like a third liner, but
like 2 first-round picks.
Right, yeah. I'm not paying you 2 first-round picks to be on my. Okay, hold on. Am I blind? Where the hell are the Colorado Avalanche? There they are. Okay. Yeah, speaking of cap crunch, by the way, oh my God.
Yeah.
Nico Bakubel, Arturi Lehkonen, Burakovsky, Cogliano, Darren Helm, Nazem Kadri, Valiant Nichushkin, Jack Johnson, Josh Manson, Ryan Murray, and Darcy Kemper. Holy Christ.
Yep. Half the roster.
Okay, so I guess, they have a lot of cap space. They're projected to have $25.5 million. Yeah, I guess that question I asked earlier about can they repeat is like really stupid, right? I didn't even realize they had this many guys on free agency. Good God.
And they still have to find the money for the year after that to sign Nathan McKinnon.
Yeah, holy Christ. And I mean, after some of the playoff rounds that these guys had, like Nichushkin, some of the the playoff run that he had, he definitely jacked his value through the roof. Kadri obviously put his value through the roof.
I mean, they kind of all did. I mean, even what's his name, Belmar, and Belmar's from Tampa Bay, but
Arturi Lehkonen, geez.
Terry Lehkonen, yeah.
Man, that's tough.
Joe Sakic's gonna have to put his thinking cap on real hard because I don't know. I don't even know where to begin, bro.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, the Avs in terms of draft picks aren't that much better off. They don't have a second round pick for the next 3 years. They have their first for the next 2 years. They don't have their first this year. They have their first for the next 2 years, but they don't have a second for the next 2 years. And off the top of my head, I can't really think of any super big prospects that they might have coming up. And Bowen Byram's up next year too. Good gravy. All right. Well,
It's
maybe it was nice while it lasted. I don't know this.
yeah, I don't know either. It's gonna be interesting. Isn't Landeskog's contract up soon too?
Nah. Landy's locked in for a while. JT Compher is up next year. Ranton is up in 2026. Eric Johnson's up next year. Yikes. Landeskog is on the roster for next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He's got 7 more years on that 8-year contract. But
Noise.
McKinnon's gonna get paid. There's no way Nathan McKinnon's making $6.5 million again, right? Like he said he would take a hometown discount, but like a hometown discount for him is like 9.5 instead of getting like 11.
Yeah, like he's. I mean, I don't. I honestly don't think the union would let him sign like a really devalued, team-friendly contract.
I think the PA would probably say something if he signed for anything less than $8.5 million. I think 8.5 is like the lowest they'll like be comfortable with him going. That's like a steep hometown discount in the interest of winning a Stanley Cup. Uh, Anything less than that, they'll probably like be in his ear and just like, hey, shouldn't, you can't like devalue the market like that. But I mean, but I guess this is one of the things that I wanted to ask is, the Colorado Avalanche this year and the last couple of years have made I'll say a decent effort to get deeper. The depth on this team was actually really, really impressive this year between guys like JT Compher, Lekin, and Burakovsky, Cogliano, Helm, Nichushkin. The depth is really, I think, what put this team over the edge from the second round exit we've seen over the last couple of years. And on defense, they did get a little bit bigger. They bought in Josh Manson, Jack Johnson. Do you think that, we've been saying it for a long time, the goaltending notwithstanding, because the goaltending on this team is not elite or anything, but we've been beating the harp of, elite goaltending, deep team, big defense, or not all big defense, but you need some meat on defense. Is this finally going to be like the signal flare to the rest of the NHL that like, hey, even the Colorado Avalanche, who were one of the bigger glass cannons coming into this year, made a concentrated effort to get deeper, and look what happened? Like, is this finally, can we put this argument of you can win a Stanley Cup by scoring your way to it to bed at this point?
I would hope so. I mean, we'll see what Toronto does in the offseason, right?
Yeah, I mean, between the Rangers and Colorado, there's no excuse anymore, right? Like, there's no excuse for ignoring your depth on your team anymore. Like, because both these teams made concentrated efforts to get deeper, and then, whoa, the Rangers went from missing the playoffs every year to an Eastern Conference Finals, and the Colorado Avalanche went from not even getting out of the second round to winning a Stanley Cup. I mean, I don't know. I'm no rocket scientist or nothing here. I'm just some idiot who talks about hockey on the internet, but like, I don't know. It seems like there's a pattern.
Yeah.
We all learned pattern recognition in elementary school, right? So there's a lot of off-season stuff that's been happening, and we're gonna get to that stuff in a sex. Good job, Rob. This has turned into a rated R podcast today, apparently. We're going to get to that in subsequent episodes, in our off-season episodes. In fact, the next episode is going to be us catching up on all this off-season news, the trades, the coaching hires, and stuff like that. But I want to limit this episode just to last season. So I guess I just want to ask you, in general, what are your thoughts on the quality of hockey we saw throughout the regular season, throughout the playoffs? anything that kind of caught your eye about hockey this year in the National Hockey League, or anything in general. Yeah, just your thoughts about how this season went as a whole.
I mean, it was definitely exciting because it was the first like quote unquote normal season we've had in a long time. But I mean, I'm not gonna lie and say the quality of hockey was amazing for all 82 games because the beginning of the season that was rough. I mean, there were a lot of times where teams are down like 4 or 5 guys to COVID and playing a lot of AHL players. So maybe it wasn't the most like competitive games all of the time. I mean, you know that better than anybody. You lost like an entire roster to COVID and they made you play those games. So,
Yeah, that was rough.
but like I don't know. I mean, it was exciting. I think this season was really exciting in one important way, and it was the what felt like the passing of the torch, or like at least the challenging for it. Like the Rangers coming in and challenging the Lightning for their crown. Even taking off what would kind of be an established team in the Carolina Hurricanes and knocking them off. You know, the Colorado Avalanche finally ascending to the top of the mountain, like finally realizing all that potential that everybody thought that they had. So, I mean, it was definitely exciting for some teams, but I don't know. I think the playoffs though, I will say, were disappointing. I feel like a lot of the series were either open and shut or it was just not competitive despite how many games were played, you know? Like on paper a lot of the series looked competitive, but when you actually look at like the box scores, it's just one team like either lighting one team up or like they just didn't bother to show up at all.
I
So
will
it was
say, oh, go ahead. Yeah.
no, so it was just like a weird year for the playoffs.
This season to me felt very much like a prelude. And what I mean by that is I've been doing a lot of thinking about the off season and next season, and it seems like there's a lot of shifts that are going to be going on in the NHL. In the Atlantic Division, we finally have somebody to challenge the Tampa Bay Lightning. The Florida Panthers, in theory, have arrived. The Toronto Maple Leafs, in theory, should finally get their act together and seriously start thinking about contending. The Boston Bruins, big question mark. Is this the end of their era? Patrice Bergeron might. The rumors are that he's coming back on a 1-year contract. They're coming in with a new head coach, but this might be the last we see of Bergeron. This might be the last we see of Marchand. Is there a power dynamic shift happening in the Atlantic? The Red Wings and the Senators, two really, really exciting young teams. Are they ready to start taking that next step to fill that void? In the Eastern Conference in the Metro, the Islanders, super big question mark going into next year. New head coach, coming off a really disappointing season. The Carolina Hurricanes, are they actually going to be for real? The Rangers have, completed the rebuild and ascended to the top of, almost all the way to the top of the Eastern Conference. There's a lot of exciting things happening in the East. And in the West, it feels like there's a lot of teams who... Oh, and in the East also, Pittsburgh and Washington. Is this the end of their eras? There's a lot of things in flux. And in the West, excuse my language, there's a lot of teams that, quite frankly, just bottom line need to get their shit together. Okay? I mean, Winnipeg got to get their shit together. Vancouver's got to get their shit together. Edmonton's got to get their shit together. I mean, Calgary's got to get their shit together. Just so many teams that I'm done playing this. Oh, we're good, but are we good? Are we good? I don't know. I'm done playing these games, right? Like, these teams need to get their act together. And so it really feels like we're building for something next year where we're going to see, empires fall, right? Are the Bruins done? Are the Islanders done? Are the Blackhawks finally going to admit that trading for Seth Jones was a bad idea and finally succumb? The rise of young teams, right? The Rangers are here. The Red Wings, are they going to get better and better and better? Like, next year, I think, is going to be a really, really exciting year for hockey. And so this year kind of built to that. And to your point, there was times where it really felt like the season didn't matter to a lot of teams. The Islanders getting their season completely torpedoed off the rip was very disappointing. The Flyers, again, completely underperforming the players on their roster. Montreal, which we all saw coming, but Montreal going from Stanley Cup Finals to worst team in the NHL. Vegas finally getting Jack Eichel and then missing out on the playoffs, right? A lot of disappointing things that happened. But next year, Vegas is going to have a full year with Jack Eichel. Maybe next year with a new head coach and John Tortorella, the Flyers do something, right? So there's a lot of intrigue and exciting things to be looking forward to next season. And I think the regular season was just okay in the grand scale of things. Um, and yeah, I think the playoffs in general, the Battle of Florida was a complete wash. The Battle of Alberta was a complete wash. I mean, there was nothing really exciting about either one of these series, to be quite
Nope.
frank. Uh, the Carolina Hurricanes Rangers series was frustrating as a non-fan of either one of these teams because after we saw the Hurricanes win the first two games on the road, and then we saw the Rangers win Game 3 at home in such a convincing fashion, it felt like, okay, I know exactly what's going to happen now. I'm not even going to watch the rest of the series up until Game 7. And
Well,
really,
yeah,
you could have done that. You know what I'm saying? Like, you could have ignored that series up until Game
pretty
7.
much.
Because we saw it with the Bruins series. Like, okay, here we go. Home team, home team, home team. Why am I even watching? Uh, as exciting as that 7 game series was, I would have liked the Leafs to get past the Lightning just for more Austin Matthews hockey later in the year. But, Edmonton kind of low key getting to the Western Conference Finals with some very, very fortunate bracket luck to match into the LA Kings, who for all intents and purposes shouldn't have been there, and then the Calgary Flames, who for all intents and purposes also maybe should not have been there because they probably did deserve to lose to the Dallas Stars. Only to get smacked out in 4 games was incredibly disappointing. Um, but there were exciting series. I mean, Rangers Penguins is one of the best playoff series I've seen in a very long time. Uh, the Colorado Avalanche Tampa Bay Lightning series was very, very exciting. Definitely some good hockey there. Um, St. Louis, Colorado was exciting, if nothing else, for the intrigue and drama. Uh, you know, I would say overall this year was an average year. There was nothing that really, really excited me. There was nothing that really, really disappointed or bored me. On the whole, I would say everything combined was an average year in the NHL. But I'm really excited for next year because there's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of intrigue, and a lot of things that feel like we were staging for this year. Um, so, is there anything else you want to say about this season as a whole before we kind of start to wrap things up here?
I don't think so. I don't think there's really any trend I noticed specifically. Like one trend I noticed that it was kind of disappointing, it was kind of frustrating, was the officiating in the playoffs. But that's any sport, or I guess it's any year, depending on how they're gonna call it. So it was just, yeah, like it was just a weird year. It just didn't feel, like you said, there were some stretches of the season that just didn't feel consequential, like at all, you know?
Yeah, definitely an odd year, but maybe maybe that's just us readjusting to the kind of a grind an 82 game season can be. So, um, definitely a good year of hockey uh, in general. But like I said, as far as like somebody like us who's been watching for a long time, this felt like very much an average year. But super duper excited for this off season and super excited for next season because there's just so many pieces I want to watch play out. Um, so before we end, we'll give out some end season awards. We'll do these ones kind of quickly. Who is your most exciting or most surprising team of the year this year?
That's a good question. Not to sound like a hometowner, but I'm gonna say the New York Rangers, honestly, for most like exciting, just because like we went from being out of the playoffs to challenging the Carolina Hurricanes for first in the division for a little bit there, and then getting to the Eastern Conference Final. So, and not even like from an outside, like not from a hometown story, but I mean like there were exciting things to watch about this team. I mean, Chris Kreider on his hunt for 50 goals. You had Igor Shesterkin proving that he is arguably the best goaltender in the NHL. I mean, Adam Fox continued to be exciting. Um, Zibanejad continued to be like his normal self. But you did have some exciting young players too. You had Braden Schneider come in and play big minutes and play an exciting part. Keandre Miller was a big part of our success this year and was exciting to watch. So you know it's not like I'm just picking the Rangers because we did go to the Eastern Conference Final. There were some exciting things happening with the team, you know. The addition of Ryan Reeves brought a new element to the team that was fun to watch every night. I mean, the changing of the head coach brought a new like attitude to the team, and they brought a new intensity to the way they played. So it was just overall, I feel like a very exciting year for the New York Rangers. But if I had to pick a team that wasn't like my hometown team, I would probably say the most exciting team this year was outside of the Rangers was the Florida Panthers. I mean, there was just so much to like about that team before they laid a giant egg in the playoffs. I mean, they were deep, they were fast, they could score, they could defend, they were getting great goaltending. I mean, there was a lot to like about that Florida Panthers team, and they were very exciting to watch. I mean, they led the league in comeback goal and comeback wins. I mean, the Rangers were second in comeback wins or third, I think. So, you know, that lends an element, you know, they had a flair for the dramatic all year, so which made it more exciting. Because you know you knew they were never out of a game. It's like, well, they've won what 31 games this year from behind, so they're just gonna do it again anyway. Um, but yeah, those would be my two picks personally.
I agree. I think the Rangers are definitely my number one pick. And when I say exciting or surprising, I don't mean surprising in that we didn't think they'd be good, because I've been beating the drum that the Rangers should have been in the playoffs the last couple of years, for the last couple of years, I guess, for lack of a better phrasing at that point.
Hmm.
Um, I'm not surprised by how well they did, but I'm excited about what this means for the team, because it means that they're not a glass cannon. It means that the proof of concept worked, that the depth is important. You need the grit, you need the depth. And obviously, when you get to watch a goalie like Igor Shesterkin play, that's always going to be a treat. You know, it's almost worth tuning in just to watch him on his own,
I
right?
mean, literally carry the Rangers most nights.
Yeah.
Make like 35 plus saves on like an average night. Just like, all right, boys, hop on. Here we go.
And for everything that you mentioned, and just being feeling like our stance on a lot of things has been vindicated, was a very exciting year for the Rangers. My
And
honorable mention. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, just like another thing with the Rangers, like if the Islanders come back next year and are as good as we think they should be, I mean that's exciting too, just an exciting prospect, right? Like the Battle of New York finally being something, you know?
Well,
Because
we haven't
historically, like,
seen like in our lifetime both teams be good at the
well,
same
yeah,
time.
and I was gonna say historically it really hasn't happened. I mean, when the Islanders were really good in the early '80s, the Rangers were okay, they were so-so, and when the Rangers were really good in the '70s, the Islanders weren't very good. I mean, granted, the Islanders did beat the Rangers in the playoffs. I think it was in 1975. But, you know, outside of that, there have been very few playoff meetings between the two teams, and like they're usually pretty conclusive and pretty not that like pretty unexciting. I mean, the Rangers played the Islanders on their way to the '94 Cup Final and swept them, you know. And the Islanders used to play the Rangers pretty much annually in the early '80s, but they used to beat us in like 4 games every time. So it was like it didn't matter, you know.
The
So
irony
like
is like
now,
the only time both teams were aligned is when we were both kind of bad in the 90s.
yeah, exactly. And then those games were only competitive because both teams were fucking ass. It was like, oh wow, look, here goes Peter Nedved against I don't who was even on the Islanders back then. Like not to sound mean, it's like I'm just having such a
Blake
hard because I don't even
Como, maybe.
yeah, because like, I don't even know who's gonna be on the Rangers other than like Peter Nedved and like
Sean Bergenheim. I don't.
yeah, exactly. Like who the hell like oh what was that defenseman with like the eye hit in the eye with the puck? The fucking
Something B. His initials are BB. I know that.
Brian Berard.
Yes.
But like, you know, so you get what I'm saying. Like, for once, it's like, oh wow, they're actually both exciting. Like, they're both competitive, and they're what's exciting about it is like, both teams are built in such like diametrically opposite like visions of what how hockey should be played. You know, so it leads like there's some drama, some excitement to it. You know, it's gonna be fun.
Yeah, definitely. You know, the irony of the Islanders being pretty much terrible from, the 90s up until very, very recently. The Rangers were terrible in the 90s too. Then obviously, essentially right around when Henrik Lundqvist came in, they started to actually compete. And then right as the Rangers, that era of Rangers hockey died out, the new era of Islanders hockey started. So it's like the two teams have been either one team's been bad, one team's been really good, or they've both been complete dog poop. And it's like that's it's exciting to think that both teams might actually be good. Granted, the Islanders' window is probably going to be closed in the next 3 years, but we'll get at least 3 years in theory of like good competitive hockey, right? And maybe even beyond that. If Lou Lamoriello is able to supplement the younger core of this roster, like Wallstrom and Barzell, with younger players, who knows? Maybe they'll be good for longer too. But so that's definitely an exciting prospect. So very good year for the Rangers, and my honorable mention for most exciting team would be the Detroit Red Wings. If nothing else, just because watching the growth that Lucas Raymond and Mo Seider had throughout the year was just so much fun to watch. I mean, Mo Seider going from people saying, "Oh, he's a bust, he was a waste of a pick," to a Calder Trophy winner who's one of the most electric and honestly fun defensemen to watch in the entire NHL. Not just because he can score, but because he absolutely puts people in the ground and he puts people in the dirt with his reverse hits. Like, you come up behind this, like, not scrawny, but like, he's not like a brick shit house. Like, you come up behind this German kid, and then the next thing you know, you're like face down on the ice because he threw his back into you. Like some real Nick Lidstrom type stuff. So I'm super duper excited to see where the Red Wings go, because they have a pretty good opportunity here. I mean, like I said, with the Bruins looking like they might be on their way out soon, it could definitely be something that they can step into. So, who's your most disappointing team of this season?
I have to actually, let me think about that for a second.
I'll go first then. I'm gonna discount the Islanders, and I'm, as much as I hate to do it, I'm also gonna discount the Golden Knights from my answer, if nothing else because at one point, yes, they had like their entire top six out, and don't get me wrong, I'm not giving them any slack. They should have made the playoffs. There's no excuse for missing the playoffs with this team, right? None at all. That Pacific Division was dog do, right? There was no excuse for them. So my vote for most disappointing team, I'm going to have to give it to the Winnipeg Jets, because as good as the Central Division was, I mean, just like when you look at this roster, for the last couple of years, this team has been incredibly underwhelming. And it sucks because this roster really is better on paper than they're playing. Them and the Vancouver Canucks. The Vancouver Canucks are very close to getting this award as well. But the other big thing is, like, you're kind of running out of time. I mean, Blake Wheeler's 35. Mark Scheifele's 29. And 29's not old, but, then you have all these guys on the roster this year that need contracts. Paul Stastny was 36. Jansen Harkins. Pierre-Luc Dubois is an RFA. Mason Appleton's an RFA. Logan Stanley's going to need a contract. And then you're basically forced to trade away Andrew Kopp because you were so bad and you wouldn't been able to sign him. So very, very disappointing year for the Winnipeg Jets. They should have been a playoff team. They've been incredibly underwhelming. And for a team that I really, really like a lot of the players on this roster, and I really like watching this team play, incredibly disappointing year for the Winnipeg Jets, in my opinion. Honorable mention, maybe I would give it to the Vegas Golden Knights. I feel okay giving them the honorable mention just because what the hell, like, what is wrong with you?
How do you miss the playoffs?
Yeah, like, what are you doing, For once, I actually can't give it to the Buffalo Sabres because I think that they're actually in a position to do something this year. Not do something, but at least get back on a proper rebuilding track. So I'm going to give them a pass. But Vancouver Canucks or Vegas Golden Knights would have been my honorable mention.
So my pick is going to be the Dallas Stars. And I think it's just because they've been, since that Stanley Cup final appearance, they've been so lackluster in almost every way. I mean, Jamie Benn's been almost a non-factor in almost every game he's been on the ice for. Tyler Seguin doesn't look like the same player. I'm pretty sure Alex Radulov went like almost the entire regular season without scoring a goal.
He had like 3 or 4 goals or something like that.
Yeah, so like And I mean, listen, that's not to take away like there are some bright spots for the Dallas Stars. I mean, Jason Robertson's been a fucking monster since getting called up. Kid's been a beast for the last year. Well, yeah, this is his second year, so the last 2 years. So, I mean, Heiskanen has been kind of shaky since his breakout performance when they went to the Stanley Cup final, but I don't know. And you combine Jason Robertson with, Jake Ottinger being an absolute stud. Like, there's some good things happening in Dallas, but like it just doesn't like it's not enough good things to outweigh all the negative and all the disappointing things that happened in Dallas. I mean, granted, they spent a lot of the year without Joe Pavelski too. I'm pretty sure he was hurt for long stretches of this year. They had the question of John Klingberg hanging over their heads, whether he was going to stay or not. I mean, I don't even think they ever resolved that. I still don't think he has a contract. So, um, but then my runner up, it's tough because like I want to pick Winnipeg because I agree with you, but you know what? For sake of argument, let's pick a different team. Nashville Predators. The Nashville Predators made the playoffs, but I mean, without UC Soros, you saw how kind of pathetic it was. Like they couldn't even put up a fight. So it was disappointing on that regard to me, but also because I really felt like this roster could have been better. Like they could have been competing for a divisional spot more consistently this year. And I mean, I know losing UC Soros hurts. I mean, that's gonna put a dent in like pretty much any team's hopes of competing for a divisional spot when you have a guy playing at that level go down. But I mean, it's not like this roster is bad. They have players, and I mean, and for once, Matt Duchene actually looked like he was living up to the contract he signed. I mean, so there were some good things that happened in Nashville, but I mean, this the fact that they didn't even put up a fight in the playoffs and some pretty lackluster performances from some pretty, significant pieces of theirs, not named Roman Yossi, and the specter of losing Philip Forsberg in the offseason for nothing really kind of makes this year a big feel kind of sour for the Nashville Predators. I mean, I guess you could also talk about the Minnesota Wild because this was really their only chance to do anything before the cap crunch crushes them. But I just don't think that's fair because it's really not Bill Guerin's. I mean, it is Bill Guerin's fault, but it's also not Bill Guerin's fault because he was handed those contracts and they were like, "We need to do something with this," you know. So like he had his hands tied, kind of. He had no options. But yeah, so I just don't think it's fair to like, and we shit on Minnesota enough. I mean, like,
Yeah,
we don't have to give them an award for it at this point. Like,
that cap recapture penalty is gonna do its damage enough for the
oh
both of
yeah,
us.
oh yeah,
I almost gave my award to the Hurricanes, by the way, because I'm so sick and tired of this team coming in every year acting like they're hot
hot
snot
shit.
and then
Yeah,
getting blown apart in the playoffs, and like it really wasn't even worth watching any Carolina Hurricanes playoff games this year because each of the it was almost like they were following a script. So you're on my shit list, Carolina. You're close. You escaped a little bit.
you were number 3 on the list. You don't
Yeah,
get mentioned.
on the list. And our favorite award here at the podcast, the Bum of the Year award, very prestigious award. Very few players have made their name. I mean, David Backes made a living on
Can we
getting this
name this? Can
award.
we rename this award the David Backes Biggest Loser of the Year award? Like,
I'm
he's won
I
it.
I will approve that change right now.
Because like he won it like I mean I gave it to him like 7 times like what was it like 4 seasons 5 seasons in a row even when he wasn't in the league anymore.
Okay, I'm approving that change. So the Lighting the Lamp podcast David Backus Loser of the Year award or Bum of the Year award. We'll say loser slash Bum of the Year.
That's
Um,
fair.
so I guess I'll go first. I had two people very very close. There were two finalists this
Ooh.
year in my mind. One was Evander Kane, just because I mean, how could you not talk about all the nonsense and garbage he did this year?
Bro, it's
Um,
honestly hard to believe that like all of that happened just in this one like calendar year. Like
right? Like, how do you have this
it like
much garbage?
Yeah, it escalated from like I think that the gambling stuff was like late 2021, and then it just like escalated to like waving handguns at your wife and like accusations of domestic violence. Like, oh my God, bro, like that was something.
And then you cap it all off by almost ending one of the best playoff runs we've seen in a long time by trying to kill Nazem Kadri.
For
So
literally no reason too. Like for once, Kadri actually was like behaving himself for an entire playoff run. He wasn't trying to like knee somebody in the head or like baseball bat their fucking face off or something. Like,
So Evander Kane was a very close finalist. You know, he might have lost this award by only one or two votes, but my Bum of the Year award is going to go to Jonathan Tays. And if there wasn't a bigger fall from grace in the world of hockey than that of Jonathan Tays this year, I really don't know who else, because Evander Kane we've always known to be kind of a scumbag. But Jonathan Tays was a very well liked and very well respected leader in the game of hockey, widely considered one of the best captains in the National Hockey League.
in the history of
And
the National Hockey League as well.
certainly. And
And I
for
mean, I
him
guess
to go to bat for two people, or three people actually, and an entire organization who covered up a sexual assault, to go to bat for them and say the things that he said, and then later on in the year, put his foot in his mouth by saying all sorts of nonsense about being upset that he wasn't included in the GM's talks about trades, and he's mad that we're trading away Brendan Hagel, but we're also at the bottom of the standings. And the on ice stuff, I'm you can give him a little bit of a pass because he did miss all of last season with his injury or his illness, and he's probably still fighting whatever illness that is. So I'm going to give him a little bit of a pass, but I do have to mention 12 goals, 25 assists for 37 points in 71 games, and a fat minus 14. You're not helping your case when you're doing crap like that on the ice. You're saying we want to compete, and you're saying we deserve to compete, and then you're pulling garbage like that. So, um, for Jonathan Tays' fall from almost the entire top of the mountain down into the lowest pit of the garbage compressor, he is my David Backus Bum of the Year. So congratulations, your award will be in the mail, as long as you don't start accusing the male person of being a good person for covering up sexual assaults or something like that. So, yeah.
I guess we know why he was known more for his actions than his words, right? Because it seems like whenever he opens his mouth, he just puts his feet right in.
Certainly, certainly. Yeah, a huge fall from grace. I've lost a lot of my respect for Jonathan Tays. There's very little left at this point. Um,
Yeah, I feel the same way, honestly.
so my bum is Jonathan Tays, with an honorable mention to the ramblin' gamblin' man, Mr. Evander Kane himself.
Yeah, this is tough. I'm trying to think. Like, I can't think of. I was gonna give it to the Blackhawks organization as a whole.
The entire team.
Yeah, I mean, when you stain the legacy of an original six franchise with this kind of shit that they did, like, you kind of deserve it. But I feel like we kind of put them on blast for like three podcasts in a row and just really laid into them. So I think people kind of just, I think like it'd be redundant, you know? And I want to say Ray Ferraro just because I really didn't enjoy listening to that man's podcast, like broadcast the entire playoffs. And it's not even just because I'm a Ranger fan, but it's like no matter what, every fucking game, this guy would be like, Igor Shesterkin's been lights out since game 3 and 4 in Pittsburgh when he got pulled in back-to-back appearances. It's like, dude, it's been 5 weeks. Like, we're a whole round removed from that now. Like, we're in the Eastern Conference Final, bro. Like, let it go. I know you're upset that we beat the Penguins. I'm kind of amazed we did it too, but like, relax. But I'm not gonna give it to Ray Ferraro, you know? Those are my honorable mentions.
I believe
I
he's the
am
first broadcast, by the way. I think
first broadcaster mentions.
somehow that might be an oversight on our part, because somehow Mike Milbury.
Or Jack Edwards definitely should have. We're gonna retcon in that Jack Edwards probably should have had this award at some point. You know?
If the Coyotes announcer kept doing the dumb nonsense that he was doing
Tyson
earlier in
Nash.
the
Oh
year,
yeah.
he would have been on the docket. But he behaved himself. He had a temper tantrum. He got put in timeout, and he behaved himself since then. So
So I guess so. The easy target. I'm just gonna go with the officials because like the NHL really needs to find some consistency in its officiating, and I don't even mean like the on ice officiating at this point. I really mean when it comes to like the war room and challenges. We really need to find some consistency in what is goaltender interference and what isn't goaltender interference because I still don't know. And it's been 3 years or 4 years since we've implemented this challenge system, and I still see like I will see a play where I'm like wholly convinced it's going one way or the other, and it will consistently get called the opposite way. Like I can't tell you how many times like I've been watching like broadcasts and had the announcers confused by it, and like even like rules analysts are like, I don't, oh no, I have to explain this, and I don't know how, because so that's one reason. Another reason is like this idea that they want to start they wanted to call cross checking a little more strict this year, and they didn't at all. Like they kind of just lied to our faces. So like that was a problem for me. It's like if you're gonna say you're gonna call something, call it. At least when they said they were gonna change the slashing rule, they did. They called it. Um, but yeah, I think I'm just gonna give it to the officials for this just like an abhorrent lack of consistency again. But this year felt worse than others, to be honest.
So there you have it. We have our first ever broadcaster honorable mention, and we have our first ever, I guess entity.
Yeah, the NHL official department, Department of, I guess it's Department of Officiating.
Are you
Looking at
including
you.
Department of Player Safety in that?
You know what? Fuck it. Yeah, why not? Let's do it.
Because they definitely deserve it after this year. And this is how they talk about legacy awards,
Mm-hmm.
like Victor Hedman or Zdeno Chara winning his I almost said Conn Smythe winning his James Norris
Trophy.
even though like it wasn't his best year ever.
Or Doughty winning his, yeah.
Yeah, because last year the Dops really was on, as the kids say, they were in raw form, and this year was no better.
So here's what I'll propose to you here. So then we can keep the Bum of the Year award nameless, and then we could have every year, or I guess yeah, because we do like the actual award yearly. We could have the David Backus Lifetime Loser Award.
A lifetime achievement of being a complete
Yeah, bro, like a
loser.
Lifetime Achievement Award. Like this way we can retroactively hand out Loser of the Year awards to people. So this way, guys, this way everybody gets the hands, bro. Raffi Torres can get an award. Fucking Paul Simon. No, Paul Simon's a songwriter.
So okay,
Chris Simon.
so okay, here's the new proposed rule set. Then the NHL Loser of the Year is a current player, entity, something that happened within the last hockey season.
Right, yeah.
And then you're saying the David Backus Lifetime Bum Award is a legacy achievement that you can give it to a current active player if they've been a bum for a couple of years, or you can give it to just an entity, thing, person, whatever, that has a legacy of being a bum. So like we mentioned earlier, like Jack Edwards would be a candidate just for being a complete jackass his entire broadcasting career.
Right, Milan Lucic would be a candidate, You could be like the 1985 Edmonton Oilers, like you could be like really oddly specific with it if you really want to, because like, why not?
Just because like they got mentioned in a broadcast once and you remembered like, oh yeah, that's right.
Or what we could do with it is do what the Hall of Fames usually do when they historically start from like the beginning. So we could just start like handing out to like Eddie Shore and like
Eddie Shore.
Eddie Shore is a lifetime loser according to the fucking first ballot Hall of Famer. Changed the game of hockey.
Who's the guy that scored on the Edmonton Oilers to lose them the series?
Oh, Steve Smith.
Steve Smith.
I mean, to be honest, it should be a combination of Steve Smith and Grant Fuhr for that play, because Grant Fuhr took his sweet time getting into the net.
The Steve Smith year. Fans have been clamoring. When is he gonna get his David Backus Bum Achievement Award?
Well, I'm here to tell you, fine listener, that based on these rock solid, newly created rules as of right this second on July 1st, 2022, he can win one now. So,
All right, so I'm gonna say right off the bat, now that we have this legacy award, every single fucking host on Spit and Chicklets is probably gonna get this award at some point. Just
oh, easily, yeah. We'll get it, bro. Like I said, everybody's getting the hands. Like everybody's getting the smoke, bro. So
some bum
we'll get
named,
around to
like
them.
Reginald Fishback from 1920 is gonna get the achievement.
The biggest bum is whoever that goalie the Rangers had in like 1945 that set like the worst goals against average. Like it was like above 6 or something ridiculous. They were losing games like 10-0 regularly with this fucking guy in net.
The 1974 Washington Capitals.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's not fair, man. The NHL owners set them up to fail. Like, it's not their fault they only won 7 games.
This is gonna
You know,
be a fun award.
who's gonna win that legacy award? Al Iafrate because of that fucking haircut, bro. What the hell was that? He was like a mullet, but like bald on top with like a little pom pom piece in the middle. Like, what the hell was that thing?
The momp, the mullet pomp.
The momp. That sounds like a disease. Oh, we got the momps.
Yeah, can I give the legacy bum achievement award to the 2014 mumps outbreak that we had in the NHL?
I mean, yeah, bro, it's a pretty bum move to have an outbreak of mumps after we eradicated that shit. Like, the
Oh my god.
only thing that would beat it on a like the bum tier list, honestly, would be like if there was like a polio outbreak or something wild in the NHL. I'd be like, what is this?
The specific variant that caused the 1929 flu epidemic.
The 1919 Spanish flu.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, that's gonna be a historical winner, bro. It canceled a Stanley Cup final. It counts.
That's
It's
true.
canon.
It's very true. So do you have any final words on this season of the LTL podcast before we wrap ourselves up here?
I don't think so.
I-
Honestly, I mean, like, it was a fun season, all in all.
Yeah, I just want to say, thank you to you for being here for, 99% of the episodes this year, and just giving me your input. It's always fun to do these, and we're not stopping. Season 4 of the LTL podcast is on the horizon. Either next week or the week after, we're going to do an episode recapping some of the off-season stuff that we've missed, because there have been some significant trades and coaching hires. And then after that, we're going to follow our usual off-season podcast sort of situation where as big news breaks, we'll do an episode. And I guess, what, I'll tease this here because we were talking about this.
Yeah, I was gonna say we might as well, right?
As part of filling the content gap, pretty much from after when free agency hits, or not even necessarily, we're going to start this whenever we want, but to kind of fill in the content gap as summer goes on, and there's usually like a big lull in NHL news from like after free agency to the beginning of the season. Steve and I both enjoy a game on Steam called Franchise Hockey Manager. In fact, they just I am going to be purchasing the latest edition on the summer sale, Franchise Hockey Manager 8. It's basically like if you guys play franchise mode for the NHL, but way more in-depth with way more text. And you can do a lot more things. You can do like historical teams. You can take over like a team from the 50s if you wanted. You can make your own teams. You could take over a team and like finish
Guatemala.
tier 2. Yeah, like
Yeah.
so. In order to fill in the content gap, Steve and I are going to be doing a series of just videos where we just play the game. We just, shoot the shit, talk about hockey, talk about what's going on, and play Franchise Hockey Manager. So that's going to be a combination of maybe short one-offs, maybe like a couple episodes might only be like an hour if we're doing one of those like one-season challenges. And then maybe some longer form if we decide to do like a couple seasons, where like we try to win a cup before some ex-player retires or whatever the case is. So be on the lookout for that, and be on the lookout for some questionable names for our general managers. We've had
Oh yeah.
we had one where we were in New Jersey. We were like it was like Tony, and our nickname was the boss. It was like Tony Mozzarella or something like that. It was
Yeah,
like
it was like something real bad, and then it was like, and then like, wasn't it like a really terrible Lou Lamoriello reference? And then like, the one in LA was bad. I can't remember the name, but oh, it was Ford Fairlane. Yeah, bro, we were we were an Andrew Dice Clay bit for our GM. So Andrew Dice Clay was just like running the ship like, "Hey, what's going on?" with this stupid
Ford.
thick Brooklyn accent.
We had Glun
God.
Shaver. That one was a big
Oh,
yikes.
that was I'm not gonna lie, like it really sounds off color. Like I don't even think it's the word shaver. I really think it's the word glun. Like glun just sounds so unnatural. It sounds like a slur from like an alien world. Like,
Sounds like
oh, you fucking glun. Like, oh,
I think the two words combined is just a very unfortunate
it kind of
occurrence.
sounds like a description, honestly. It sounds like an adverb. What is he? Oh, he's a glun shaver. Like, oh,
Ooh.
what does that even mean?
And yeah, so be on the lookout for that. We tend to get into some shenanigans. Like we've done things like rip like Mark Messier off of teams before. Like
Oh, what was the one who did we go out and get for with the Kings? Wasn't it like something ridiculous? We went out and like had like two studs. It was
uh,
like Wayne Gretzky. Oh yeah, we got Brett Hall. We went out and traded for
yeah,
Brett
Brett
Hall.
Hall and Wayne Gretzky on the same team. Kind of a big yikes for the rest of the league. So yeah, it'll be fun. Those will just pop up on the channel as well. We have to record them. We have to start soon. Like I said,
Yeah.
unfortunately, I've been a little under the weather, but I'm all good now. Been fever free for like 48 hours, so we're kicking it. And we'll start recording those soon, and you'll just kind of see those as there's gaps in content. So be on the lookout for both our off-season regularly scheduled podcasts, although they're not really regularly scheduled. They just happen as things happen. Like I said, sometime within the next 2 weeks, we'll do a recap and talk about some of the trades and some of the coaching hires that have happened. And then as big news breaks, we'll have our episode about the draft. We'll have our episode about free agency. And we'll throw in some misadventures of two morons trying to run an NHL team so we can, I guess, put our money where our mouth is, and since we talk so much nonsense on here. So, yeah, I think that's pretty much all I want to say. So thank you guys for watching all season. Really appreciate anyone that's tuned in. And be on the lookout for Season 4 starting technically maybe within a week or two. So I want to thank you guys for watching, and we will see you guys again next time.